This is free agency week 2, but it's guest week on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Welcome to the Tuesday episode of the show. And today we're talking to Mike Barner. In about 20 seconds or so, we'll get him loaded up here with biggest winners and possibly losers from free agency. He's also a Bulls fan, and the Bulls are a hectic mess right now. You know what? The hell with it. First of all, I'm Dan Vespers. Welcome to the show. Let's just get Mike in here. There's absolutely no reason to wait any longer. First of all, episode 2 with you, Mike. I want to try to get, this is something that I know I've said before, but like, I'm working very hard now, and I want to rectify past wrongs by getting everybody on the show. It's so much more fun to talk to you guys. Our last show actually was, I don't even know that it was like the main point, but we got down this path that people liked it a lot. So anyway, first of all, Mike, you the man. Second of all, I don't know if people realize this, but this was like the one window I had free today, and Mike suggested, he was like, how about we do Tuesday at like 11 a.m. Pacific? And I was like, yes, that's the absolute best time ever. And so Mike, first of all, thank you. Second of all, welcome back, dude. It's good to talk to you.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it was that old man telepathy. We just knew exactly the same time. You know, our brand muffins haven't kicked in yet, so we have some extra time here. We're good to go.
Are you saying that you don't have to go to the bathroom within like the first 20 minutes of waking up?
I'm just talking about muffins. That's all I'm talking about.
Yeah, clearly just the muffin part, if brand muffin was in question there. This has nothing to do with fantasy basketball. I've largely eliminated dietary fiber because I'm such an old man that it's just endogenous, man. I got natural old man fibers just pushing it all. But I got to start with the Bulls. I know I said before we went on air, Mike and I were talking, I was like, look, if the Bulls don't come up organically, I'm going to bring them up. And you were like, they'll come up. And I'm like, you know what? Screw that. I'm just bringing them up. The last time we spoke, you had intense frustration that the Bulls hadn't done anything to blow it up. And now we know, obviously, the first few parts of this have happened. But so let's talk from a Bulls standpoint, and then we can pivot more to the fantasy side because there's both at play here. Are you thrilled that it finally happened or super frustrated at how late it happened right now?
Can I say both? I'll say both. They needed to do this. They waited too long. It was 9th seed or bust last year. They wanted to get that play-in tournament. Jerry Reinsdorf is so excited. They got that extra home game. He got paid for the luxury tax because he kept the Bulls under it, so he gets his share of that. So he got what he wanted. They could have gotten a lot more for Caruso and DeRozan had they traded them last year. I like what they got for Caruso. I like Josh Giddey. I think he still has a lot of upside. Can he play defense? No. Can he eventually turn into a good three-point shooter? Maybe. But they need someone young who can push the pace and help create offense for their teammates. They haven't had that. As good as Kobe White was last year, he's not exactly a great push it at a fast pace, get everybody involved kind of point guard, which Giddey is. So I like that trade. I don't care that they didn't get, everybody's saying, why are the Thunder just going to give up picks just because they have them? Like the argument is, they made a trade with the Thunder. They should have gotten picks. Well, just because the Thunder have 1,000 picks doesn't mean they're just going to get rid of them. Like they don't mean anything. Would it have been nice to get a second-round pick back in the deal? Yes. Could you have gotten a first and Josh Giddey for Caruso? No, I don't think so. Then there was the talks last year where I guess they could have gotten 2 second-round picks for Caruso. Those are probably going to be 2 late second-round picks in a bad draft. Maybe they were going to get 1 bad draft pick this year and a bad draft and then 1 next year. I'd rather have Giddey. I'd rather see what he can be and then maybe sign him to a long-term deal. So I like that. They got a couple of picks back in the DeRozan. I didn't want to sign him to a long-term deal anyways. They need to get the ball in the hands of the young guys more. So I have no problem with that. The next thing is they have to trade Zach LaVine. The problem is nobody wants him.
That is, so you touched on a lot of things there, and I want to cover each of them because there are fantasy implications for all of that stuff. Starting with Josh Giddey, he's got these very obvious 9 category holes in his game. One of them you brought up, which is a 3-point shot. The other one is that he's not a particularly good foul shooter either. He's also generally kind of a high turnover guy. I'm looking at his numbers not from this season, but the previous one when it still seemed like he was kind of part of the plan in Oklahoma City. And that year, he was at 31 minutes a game, like 17, 8, and 6, which not bad for those counting stuff, but not much else. So as a Bulls guy, where does he fit? How do the pieces line up? Because right now it looks like you've got Giddey, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Vooch is still there. Patrick Williams, probably the 4. Is that the starting 5, you think, if it rolled out right now?
Yeah, I think ideally what the Bulls would like to do is obviously trade LaVine, and then your 3 guards are Giddey, Kobe White, and Ayo Dosunmu are your 3 primary guards. They still have Javon Carter. They can bring him off the bench. They, for some reason, seem to still like Dalen Terry. Someone needs to feed that guy a cheeseburger because I think he weighs like 90 pounds and he can't guard anybody because he has no strength whatsoever. The offseason goal for Dalen Terry should be to eat as many cheeseburgers as possible.
Muscle watch. We got a muscle watch.
He's got nothing. But I, as of right now, yes, I think the starting 5 would be Kobe White, LaVine, Giddey, Patrick Williams, and Vucevic. I really like the Jalen Smith signing as the new backup center. They should have traded Andre Drummond. I guess the reported deal last year was they were going to get 3 second-round picks for him. They should have done that. Those could have been things that they attached to Zach LaVine to get rid of him this year. But I digress. We had to get that 9th seed and that extra home game. So yeah, I think but I think Giddey is going to have the ball in his hands a ton. Kobe White is very good at playing off the ball. Ayo Dosunmu is not a high usage rate guy. If LaVine is on the team at the start of the season, I don't think it's going to be a good environment. I would not be surprised if at some point he just stops playing if he's still on the team as they work to try and trade him. Maybe he establishes that he's healthy. He gets a lot of points on a bad team. He has a crazy high usage rate with DeRozan gone. And then by the middle of November, he's shut down as they try to trade him to maybe the Lakers are 6-10 at that point and panicking, and they're willing to give up something to get him. But I think Giddey in points leagues, he'll be more valuable simply because, like you said, the percentages don't really matter. He'll be a good points, rebounds, assists guy. But I do like him a lot for fantasy basketball this year, as I like Vucevic. We were talking about some winners before the show started. I think Vucevic is a big winner of what the Bulls have done this offseason. He's become, the third fiddle behind LaVine and DeRozan. And then Kobe White's emergence last year further pushed him down the pecking order when it came to scoring. With DeRozan gone, LaVine possibly out the door or always hurt, you're going to be looking at Kobe White and Vucevic as the main scoring options. Giddey is not a 25-point-a-game guy like DeRozan was. Patrick Williams is not a big-time scorer. Ayo Dosunmu is not. So by default, Vucevic is probably going to have a higher usage rate this year.
Talking to RotoWire's Mike Barner at Roto Mike Barner on social media. Do you think Vooch could be on the move?
I think they would like him to be on the move, but I don't think anybody's going to trade him. The one team that's out there that needs a center is the Pelicans. I mean, there's no secret about it. They basically don't have a center right now. However, the Bulls are trying to get younger, so they're trying to take back, expiring contracts or young players, draft assets, that kind of thing. They're not going to take back Brandon Ingram in a trade with the Pelicans to make salaries work so Vucevic can go to the Pelicans. And to be honest with you, Vucevic and Zion Williamson are a terrible fit together. Vucevic plays no defense. So that wouldn't be, the biggest problem for Vucevic is I don't really see a landing spot as to what team would take him on at that salary. Now, as the trade deadline approaches and he's only signed for 1.5 more seasons, maybe somebody's hurt, another team, it might make more sense. But I think of LaVine and Vucevic, the one that has the best chance of being traded before we start next season would be LaVine.
Where do you think, this is sort of reading the clouds a little bit, where do you think these guys might go in fantasy drafts? Or maybe an easier question, not easy, but easier, is where would you be looking to take them?
I think probably, first of all, I'm not drafting LaVine. No matter what team he's on, if he's on the Bulls or another team, the guy is always hurt. So I'll put that out there right now. I will not draft LaVine.
Easy, off the table.
That's out. He's gone. Him, Kawhi Leonard. I don't even want to be in the same neighborhood as those
How
two guys
dare
themselves.
you? Kawhi Leonard
No.
was amazing this last year.
No,
How dare you?
he's hurt all the time.
Yeah, you're right. He's going to be doing a lot, and that's
when
not
you were doing
necessarily a
the
good thing.
logo for the old man squad, there should have been some incorporation of Kawhi Leonard on here.
Yeah, the dude holding the cane is actually. Well,
Yes,
that's the thing though. Like, how would I pick between? They got to go back to like the founding member, I think, of the old man squad was. Oh man, I feel like it was like Marvin Williams, like a decade ago or
yeah,
something like that.
Fella
So,
Harrington, maybe.
yeah,
Something like
one
that.
of the he might be one of those guys. I don't know that. Sean, the guy who did the logo, just like as soon as he showed me guy dunking holding cane, I was like, I don't care who that guy is. That's the logo. That's a beautiful thing. No, but seriously though, like
yeah,
Levine,
I think Kobe White will probably be him or Vucevic will be the first bull off the board. I think Kobe White, could he see a decline in his efficiency this season with a higher usage rate? Maybe, but he showed when Levine was out last year that he is no stranger, especially chucking up 3-pointers. He had some cold stretches where he got cold from behind the arc. He had a finger injury at one point that wasn't really reported about a lot. That slowed him down for a stretch. I think him and Vucevic will probably be the first ones off the board, simply because, yes, Giddey gives you those points, rebounds, and assists, but not much else. So I would suppress him back between those two guys, after those two guys.
Now let's flip over to the other side of this thing because DeMar DeRozan not traded. I mean, technically traded, but it's like traded in like pencil shavings.
So he could get more money. That's
exactly.
the trade, so he can get paid more. That's what it is.
The Bulls didn't get a whole bunch of stuff back. They got a little bit of stuff back. What do you make of the situation in Sacramento? Because Harrison Barnes out, DeRozan in. Like the simple explanation, and sometimes Occam's razor and all that, is you bring in a guy that's a high usage dude. Everybody is impacted around that dude somewhat negatively, and it feels like, at least at first glance, and maybe I'm oversimplifying this, but how do you fit DeRozan into Sacramento without everybody having to do a little bit less? Is there a way?
Yeah, I think everyone is going to do a little bit less. Especially, I think Keegan Murray is just going to stand in the corner and shoot threes. I think that's going to be his main role. I think of the three guys, I think DeRozan's going to take the biggest hit simply because he's the new guy. Sabonis is not a high usage rate guy, anyways. So, I mean, it's not like he's going to fall off the face of the earth in terms of his scoring. He's a great offensive rebounder, that kind of thing too. I think Fox is going to take a little bit of a hit, but I think this is his team. And I think DeRozan probably recognizes that and realizes that he's coming into Fox's team to provide that veteran safety valve. I mean, they're going to be awesome late in games between Fox and DeRozan. The Bulls did not have great records after the Lonzo Ball injury with DeRozan in the fold, but man, there are few guys in the league I feel as comfortable with the ball in their hands in the final seconds as DeRozan. That guy is as clutch as they come. So for fantasy purposes, yeah, I think DeRozan's going to take the biggest hit. I think Keegan Murray is not going to ascend. He's a very talented young player, but there's just too many between Fox and DeRozan. There's too many guys taking shots for Murray to really see a significant increase in his usage rate to help his fantasy value.
Let's well, I don't know. You know what? I'll let you steer the ship a little bit here. Talking to again Mike Barner at Roto Mike Barner, RotoWire, of many places actually. Many places. I don't want to shortchange any of the other stuff that you're working on these days. So do you want to go to a loser, a fantasy loser, or do you want to go to a fantasy winner?
Yeah, I'll talk about a loser. I think one of the biggest losers is not personally,
right,
because he's a nice guy. But I'll say CJ McCollum takes one of the biggest hits here in terms of fantasy. Getting DeJounte Murray there for the Pelicans, another guy who's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Now, there's talk about them trading Brandon Ingram. If they do that, that would help McCollum. But Murray's still going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Zion Williamson has the ball in his hands a lot. So McCollum is going to have less opportunities for assists. His usage rate's going to go down. So he's one of the people that I think is going to be impacted the most negatively by moves made to his team. And then another loser, simply because his team didn't make another trade, staying with the Hawks, is Onyeka Okongwu. Please trade Clint Capella. Can we please get Okongwu some more minutes? Last season, he started 8 games. In those 8 games, Okongwu averaged 16.1 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks.
Yeah.
Send Capella to the Pelicans. They should have sent him along. with DeJounte Murray to the Pelicans. Capella should have gone there too. We have to get Capella off the Hawks so we can free Okongwu.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, it feels like we're doing the John Collins thing all over again.
Yes.
Where he's
You're
on the
right.
block for 2.5 years, and then all of a sudden they're just like, all right, fine, we'll just whatever. Go anywhere you want. Anybody got a second rounder? Anybody?
Yeah.
Anybody? 1 second? Like, isn't that what they got back from Utah? Was like 1 second rounder or
Yeah,
something?
Well, his contract was so bad. Capella's contract isn't great. I don't think it's John Collins bad, but the problem is, where is he going to go?
Yeah, I don't know.
He's a team's not going to trade for him to be their backup center. So where is he going to start? There are very few teams outside of the Pelicans that need a center. So I don't really see a great landing spot for him. It might be a similar situation as to a team's going to have an injury during the season where they lose their starting center for multiple weeks, if not multiple months, and then they reach out to the Hawks and try and get Capella. Yeah, it's tough. Okongwu, he needs Capella out of there to really reach his. I have him in a dynasty league. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting.
So
And I know it's just, and I have a win now roster on that team, hoping that he can ascend my center spot, and he's just dragging me down. So yeah, I think he's also another significant loser simply because Clint Capella is still on the Hawks.
Would you, and there's a lot of schools of thought on this one. Would you draft Okongwu in a redraft league and then just like hope that this is the year? Because he's probably going to go relatively late, knowing what we've all seen the last multiple years in a row now.
Yeah, I don't mind if you can take him late. I mean, it's got to be outside the top 100, obviously,
Right.
simply because Capella is still a good player.
Yeah.
Just because I don't want him on the Hawks anymore doesn't mean he's not a good player. And he still puts up big numbers, even in limited minutes. And he plays well with Trae Young, too. The two of them play well together. So, yeah, I don't mind taking a flyer if that trade were ever to happen, or Capella were to get hurt for an extended period of time. Then, yeah, I mean, if you hadn't drafted him and he's sitting on the waiver wire and you're in a fab league, get ready because you're going to have to spend a lot to get him on your team.
That's the thought. And if you're in like a games cap league that affords you the opportunity to kind of squat on maybe one guy, blow a roster slot and just sit on him. Let's see how many more of these we can fit in. We'll go a little bit lightning round mode here. It doesn't have to be like 10 seconds a piece, but you gave me a nice list and I want to make sure we don't miss out on. You had a couple of losers from New York on your board. You want to go that direction?
Yeah, I'll go quick there. Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo went from playing 40-plus minutes a game in the playoffs to now being bench members of the Knicks. That's a great problem for the Knicks to have. The problem is when you're a bench player for Tom Thibodeau, that's not like being a bench player for most coaches, especially when Tibbs has Mikal Bridges on his team. Bridges is he might never come out. They're going to have to find ways they're going to have to tap Tibbs on the shoulder and say, hey, take him out.
What's 82 times 48? You might see Bridges play 3,936 minutes this year.
Now, I know Mikal Bridges has actually done this before because he was traded during the season, but I've made the joke, if Tibbs could play Mikal Bridges 83 games this season, he would.
And he did. He did.
Mikal Bridges has done that before, so Tibbs can even say, you've done it before, do it again. One of those kinds of things. So, but I think DiVincenzo and Josh Hart are going to see a significant – because we're all going to remember what they did in the playoffs. They were putting up insane stats in the playoffs, and a lot of times that bleeds into fantasy drafts. The last time you see guys in the playoffs, these guys go – Caleb Martin. He went nuts in the playoffs for the Heat a couple years ago, and people were thinking more highly of him than he should have been. I'm not putting Hart and DiVincenzo are much better fantasy assets than Caleb Martin ever was. So I'm not putting them in that category. But, they could play 25, 26 minutes a game if everybody's healthy on this. Julius Randle's coming back. He's going to play a lot of minutes too. Now, he could play some 5 when Mitchell Robinson's not in the game, so that helps with all those forwards that the Knicks have. But, yeah, downgrade for Hart and DiVincenzo.
What do you think about Mitchell Robinson, actually? He wasn't on either of your lists, but as long as we're in New York, untethered starter if he can stay on his feet.
That's the problem. The injuries worry me. There's also some Walker Kessler chatter that he's on the block with the Jazz. Then the Knicks have the draft. Even after the Bridges thing, they still have some draft assets to be able to go and get him. That would be crazy. If they could put a shot blocker like him in the middle with all of those defensive wings that they have, I mean, that would be insane. I'm not necessarily seeking Mitchell Robinson just because Hartenstein is gone. I still think he's a significant injury risk and someone that I'd be a little wary of drafting.
All right, hit me with another winner while we're we got a couple minutes left.
All right, I want to go. I'll go through a couple of high-end winners, and then I'll breeze through a couple of ones to remember with your last few picks.
Mm-hmm.
So someone has to score on the Nets. Okay, they don't have anybody left. Ben Simmons. I don't care how many shirtless off-season workout videos.
He ain't playing.
He's not playing. So Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson, the Cams, are going to be put. Cam Thomas is going to score 1,000 points. Okay, he already jacks up way too many shots. He's going to go nuts. So the Cams are two guys to keep an eye out on the Nets, and then working our way down. So you're in a deeper league, 12 teams deeper, maybe your last pick. I want you to keep your eyes on, keep in the back of your mind, two centers. One, Andre Drummond. Two, Mason Plumlee. Now, the argument for Drummond, we saw what he did last year when Vucevic was hurt. He started 10 games for the Bulls. He averaged 14.1 points and 17.9 rebounds.
Yeah.
The guy is still one of the best rebounders in the NBA. And who is he behind? One of the most injury-prone centers in the NBA in Joel Embiid. If you draft Joel Embiid, I highly recommend you also draft Andre Drummond and put him on your bench.
Also, by the way, it seems like Andre Drummond might be the nicest dude in the NBA based on the stories I'm reading.
Yes. His teammates love him. The Bulls love them.
How could you not? And plus, he's part of one of the greatest pictures in the history of basketball, the LeBron pantomime post move picture, which also I think was considered like a cursed photo in Lakers lore. But either way, completely agree. Embiid is not gonna even be trying to play. No. There's that part of fantasy drafting, and there's kind of two schools of thought, and I think the reality probably falls somewhere in the middle, which is one school says you can't draft at all on health, and the other says I can handicap everybody's health. But there's a midpoint, which is like at least take into account whether or not a player is even attempting to play in 82 out of 82 games. And you know Embiid's not, because there's no reason to. That team's going to be good. They need him on his feet in April. So don't try. I don't know what his target is. It's probably like 65 to 68 games. So you know you're getting, I would think, 15 Drummond starts at bare minimum.
I think you're looking 2025. I think 2025 is probably the range in starts for Drummond. And he is an elite rebounder. Now, I know we're pumping up Drummond here. I don't want to just gloss over Mason Plumlee and not get back to him. Mason Plumlee is an excellent passing big man. He has a lot of scorers around him. Who is blocking him from playing time? Jusuf Nurkic. Now, Nurkic played 76 games last year. The last two seasons before that, he played 108 games combined. Do I think Jusuf Nurkic is going to play 75-plus games in 2 straight seasons? No way. So you could get 15 to 20 starts out of Mason Plumlee. You're not going to get crazy Drummond stats, but you could get 6 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists a game. If you're in a 12-team or deeper league and you get that with your last pick, that's not something to ignore.
By the way, I wouldn't put it past the situation in Phoenix for Plumlee to outplay Nurkic. I don't think Nurk is that great of a basketball. I mean, maybe I'm underselling him a tiny bit, but he's very slow. He's better offensively than Plumlee. Make no mistake. Yeah. He's got him on offense. But is that the issue for Phoenix?
No.
Definitely not. You got Booker, you got Kevin Durant, you got other. Sorry, Bradley Beal. You now fall into the other. Beal's better than an other. That's not fair. But I think they'd rather have a big man. And Nurk can pass a little bit too. So there's no real drop-off there. But wouldn't they rather have one that can go and maybe get in the way of somebody on defense? Because Nurk is incredibly slow. The reason I know this to be true, and I watch a lot of Laker games, is they're like Anthony Davis has trouble with almost every big bruising big man in the NBA except for 2, Valanciunas and Nurk. And the thing those 2 dudes have in common is that they can't move. They are glued to the floor. All the other big dudes move just enough to get in his way. And those dudes, it's like, past him. And then they're just looking. Where'd he go? Oh,
how can you be poo-pooing Wizards starting center Jonas Valanciunas?
No, actually, for fantasy purposes, I love it. By the way, you've the Cam Thomas paralleled what Dan Titus said on yesterday's show. Is Valanciunas on your board too?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they don't want to play Sarr a ton of minutes at the 5. Okay, nor would it make sense. So I like, and it's not like he signed for crazy money either. I know people are joking, the Wizards they got Valanciunas and Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. That's terrible. Well, someone has to play, and Valanciunas is at least a reliable veteran who can get you a double-double anytime he steps onto the floor. So I don't mind that signing at all.
No, I don't either. And what I was saying with Dan yesterday, which again, I like to try to really simplify the handicap on some of this stuff, which is when Valanciunas looks around him, is there anyone on that team that he's going to feel bad taking a shot away from? Anyone. Literally one. Maybe Kuzma. Maybe.
Well, Jordan Poole will yell at him to give him the ball, maybe.
Yeah, he's not giving. He knows he ain't getting it back. So, like, he was in a situation in New Orleans where he looked around and was like, yeah, all these guys are really good on offense. I don't need to take shots here anymore. And you saw his usage dip this last year. It was the fewest shots per minute for JV since, like, his second year in the league or something. That's because he had McCollum and Ingram and Zion and Trey Murphy, these guys that are really good on offense. And now he goes to Washington. Not the same situation at all. So, yes, as much as I think it's hilarious that he can't guard anyone, it doesn't matter because no one on that team's going to guard anybody. So, anyway, Mike, what you got going on these days? Promo time. Hit me with all the good stuff besides vacation.
You mentioned follow me on Twitter at Roto Mike Barner. That's where I post links to all my articles. Doing a lot of baseball stuff right now for Roto Wire, Roto Baller, and Real Time Fantasy Sports. A lot of prize pick stuff, betting stuff, season-long content. Still churning away here with basketball off-season content. So I appreciate you having me on the show. And yeah, just follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it nowadays. And you'll find links to all my work there.
It's Twitter. It's fine. We don't even.
We're old men. We can't call it whatever. It's like you still have to call. I have to get the clicker out. You got to talk about that. I mean, you got to talk about. We're old, so we still have to
talk the Facebook.
Yeah, we still talk about taping things, even though you're just DVRing it. Can you tape that? I want to watch that later.
Yes, they know what we mean when we say it. Yes. We're not going to change our nomenclature on something so simple as tape the show. That's faster too, by the way. That's one syllable. DVR is 3. It's evolutionarily superior to use the one syllable word because I can get through my sentence super fast. And that
my wife picks on me because I still keep a physical check register book. She doesn't understand why I don't just do it online. And I said, well, sometimes it doesn't process in time, and I want to know exactly how much has gone in and out. Hence why I keep the check register book.
I stopped doing that, by the way.
That's one of the prerequisites to being in the old man squad is you have to physically keep a check register book.
I feel like so it came up in an old man squad host discussion that people that are just coming in don't realize that this is not a place where it's only old men allowed. It's from the list of players that I draft on my fantasy team. It's not like if you are a grumpy old woman, you are very welcome here. So if anybody out there wants to podcast, please, man, woman, child, you can be a grumpy child. I don't care.
If Myrtle is angry in the assisted living home, she can tune in and talk about how the Jell-O pudding tasted like garbage today.
Yeah, it was old, man. You can't serve that stuff to them after the Best Buy date. It's going to start to taste weird. Don't they know? Hey, one last question before I let you go. Sure. We talked about Capella. We talked about Okongwu. What are your thoughts on Dyson Daniels coming into Atlanta and then maybe some of the remaining names there, like a Jalen Johnson or a Bogdan Bogdanovic or something like that?
Yeah, Bogdanovic is going to be interesting. They always seem to prefer to like to bring him off the bench. He's got a path to starting now. Could they start Daniels? Sure. Bogdanovic isn't exactly a pillar of health either, so that makes Daniels even more appealing. The biggest winner is going to be Jalen Johnson, simply because Murray was one of the higher usage rate guys on the Hawks, and now he's gone. And Johnson, outside of Trae Young, is one of the best scoring options that the Hawks have left. So I think he's going to be he showed last season he can be a major fantasy asset. So he's a guy I'm going to be actively pursuing in drafts this year.
Yeah, he feels like Jalen Johnson strikes me as the guy that's going to just like his ADP is going to start at like 40. And by October 1st, it's going to be like 26 or something like that.
Oh, I got to take him at the end of the second round. Oh,
right.
All right.
All right. No, do I want to? But he was also a bit banged up last year. for whatever that's worth. And I don't know, some of it felt fluky, but he's also, high fly act. He was number 58 in the second half last year because his free throw number went down to a 68%, but he still averaged 17 points, 9 boards, 4 assists, 1.1 steals, 0.8 blocks, 1.5 threes, and 47% from the field. If Jalen Johnson gets any better, he has the fantasy profile to be an absolute top of the board guy. But Mike, I took more of your time than I intended to. I'm extraordinarily grateful that you carved out a window for me today. He is at Roto Mike Barner on Twitter, and a crusty, grumpy old fella. And that's the way we like him here on the show. Mikey, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on. I'm going to go back to yelling at the neighborhood kids to get off my lawn.
They shouldn't be there in the first place. See you later, Mike.
Later.
He is Mike Barner. He is an old man squad friend of the show. I don't even know what to friend of the show, just like honorary member. Old man squad honorary member. But then it was true. It was pointed out to me that as this show and as this network grows, people might start to think, oh, Dan only wants grumpy old men as pod hosts. And that's very much not the case at all. So I got to figure out a way to make sure people know the backstory. It's not about the people. It's not about the hosts. It's about my fantasy team. My fantasy team is always going to be old men because I'm playing fantasy basketball. Everything else, I want all of the grumpy old people, like I was just saying. And feels like a good time, actually, to throw it out there. Right when I launched this network, there were like a dozen folks that reached out about being a part of it and launching a show and all that good stuff. It's slowed down a tiny bit now. We'll be launching a few shows probably over the next 2 to 3 months as the NBA season gets closer again, but it's much easier for me to actually process what's going on. So if this is a thing that you've been interested in getting into, please reach out. I don't want to say I have a boatload of available time because I'm mostly taking kids to and from activities, but if this is a thing you've been thinking about trying, and it doesn't have to be fantasy basketball, it can be basically anything. I'm hoping that a good friend of mine will be launching a show about coaching at some point in the next couple of months. Or he also happens to be a nationally renowned marathon runner. So maybe it's going to be in that department. We'll have some team shows. We'll have some fantasy shows. There's a lot of stuff in the works, but if you want to be a part of it, please don't hesitate to reach out. As far as NBA news goes, there wasn't really much over the last 24 hours. Cade Cunningham inked his extension. This was always expected to happen. But now I guess it's been fully agreed upon. It could go as high as $269 million over 5 years. He was obviously not going anywhere. He's a foundational piece for that Detroit Pistons team. Sacramento Kings draft pick Devin Carter is expected to undergo shoulder surgery. I don't think that's going to matter all that much in the near term anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. And that's basically what's happened over the last 24 hours. Lakers still haven't done anything. Jeremy Grant still linked to the Lakers. So is Kuzma. So is Zach LaVine. Obviously, we'll reassess when that news goes down. But for now, that is basically what you got from today's show. So please take a moment, everybody. If you're watching during, after the fact, whatever it is on YouTube, hit that like button and subscribe. It goes a long way. I don't know if you guys know this about YouTube. You can't monetize anything on YouTube until you have 500 subscribers and 3,000 watch hours on your channel, which again, what a dummy. Dano launched his fantasy show in the dead of the offseason. But again, whatever you guys can do to help there, it helps bring people's attention to the fact that this is still kind of a relatively new thing that I'm working on. So that goes a long way. Obviously, if you're listening, iTunes, Spotify, Overcast, whatever, after the fact, drop that 5-star review. If you haven't had a chance to do it before, it's super easy on Spotify. Once you listen to an episode, you can just hit the button to rank it. iTunes, Apple, whatever, it's a little bit harder to find. Quick version is you go to the podcast app on your mobile device, search for Old Man Squad. It'll pop up. Click on the name of the podcast, not an episode, and then you scroll down past the first 15 or 20 shows, and that's where the rating and review is kind of down near the bottom. Thank you once again to Mike Barner. If you guys forgot the list from today's show, I can rattle it off here towards the end. His potential free agent losers: Onyeka Okongwu, DeMar DeRozan and perhaps some of the other Kings. Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, and CJ McCollum back on New Orleans. Possible winners, Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Nikola Vucevic. We didn't talk about James Harden. He was on the list that Mike sent me before the show as well. Norman Powell is a possible winner in Clippers Town. Question, of course, is whether he does enough to get over that hump. Jalen Johnson, Bogdan Bogdanovic in Atlanta in a much better spot. Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson in Brooklyn. Andre Drummond and slightly deeper Mason Plumlee are your two big men, backup big men that may work their way into fantasy value over the course of this season. Coming up the rest of this week, I'll be recording 2 episodes tomorrow. We'll only air one of them. I believe the one that will air tomorrow will be with Mike Catron. He is the host of the Watching the Boxes podcast. We'll talk at probably around the same time as today, I believe. No, a little bit earlier. We'll go a little bit earlier tomorrow on that one. Matt Smith, Smitty. He and I will be recording an audio-only podcast later on tomorrow evening, and I have to figure out if that is going to drop, if there's any way for me to get that actually onto the YouTube channel. I suppose I could do a live show where I play the audio of that one, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. So it's possible that the Smitty episode will be a Apple or, Apple podcast, whatever they call it, iTunes podcast, Spotify, whatever. It might be an after-the-fact iteration only. And then on Friday, Alex Rickling, who was probably the first external old man, because no one loves Brooke Lopez as much as me and Alex. And he'll be on our Friday show. At some point next week, we'll be talking to fellow Believe Podcast Network host Robin Marks, who's responsible for sending me that amazing t-shirt that has the fantasy nerds on it. We'll also be talking to Rhett Bauer, Dynasty expert. He sent me a Dynasty thread on the side that I'm trying to convince him to put out on social media for you guys. That'll be on next week. And then we're going to be diving into team previews now that the dust is beginning to settle a little bit. But again, these guest episodes, super fun, also buying us a little bit of time for the last few pieces to fall into place on the fantasy side. Folks, have a fantastic Tuesday wherever you are. We'll be back with you again tomorrow. I am Dan Vespers at Dan Vespers on Twitter. If you follow at Old Man Squad on Twitter, it will follow you back. But you'll also get all the episode announcements when this show drops, when all the other shows on the network drop as well. So please do give a follow to those. Give a follow to Roto Mike Barner. And that's that for a Tuesday. See you guys tomorrow, everybody.